So just over 8 months ago, I uploaded my first ever YouTube video, and it somehow pulled in over 84,000 views. But the best part is that it's still going strong, even 8 months later, bringing in around 300 to 500 views per day. And that one video has allowed me to go full time as a YouTube scriptwriter, and I've written scripts for all kinds of YouTubers, so I guess I can officially call myself a professional at this. So in this video, I'm going to reveal my exact script writing formula step by step, and we'll also be breaking down the script line by line, so you can basically just steal the whole thing and try it out for yourself. So to begin, I want to break down the script into 4 sections. We basically have the packaging, the intro, the main body sections, and the outro. And I'm going to be diving into the specifics of each of these 4 sections. Now I know that this is a script writing video, but the packaging is actually very important when it comes to getting views on YouTube. And you can break down the packaging into 3 sections, pretty much the idea, the title, and the thumbnail. Now, as I am a scriptwriter myself, I would like to be biased and say that the script is the most important part, but I would be lying if I did that. Okay? In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and say it is more important, okay? Especially when it comes to the return on investment that you would get for the amount of time that you put into the packaging. If we're following the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule that people like to talk about, spending just an extra hour to 2 hours into the idea generation phase, the titles, the thumbnails, is going to net you a way bigger benefit than spending that extra time on your script, okay? Because let's say you were to outsource the script writing process. To get a high quality script, you're looking at spending anywhere between $500 to $1,000 on that script. Whereas with a thumbnail, you can do the exact same thing and spend $10 on a decent thumbnail. If you want more higher quality, you might be spending $50 to $100, but it's so much cheaper and it gets you so much more. So you gotta focus on this thing first. But enough yapping about this. Let's dive into how you can actually make the title and thumbnail high quality. So there's all these, tricks and algorithm hacks that you can do, like do this face, do this thing, use these colors, but at the end of the day, you want to focus on the main, universal laws. The main thing that makes you click on a thumbnail is curiosity. You want to find something out. You see the thumbnail, it builds intrigue. That's basically the rule, okay? So as long as you follow that and focus on this one thing, you should be doing okay with thumbnails. Now, when I talk about curiosity loops, there should be 3 to 4 questions that the viewer has in their mind that would make them want to click. If your title and thumbnail does not do that, then it's not a good thumbnail. So I'm going to show an example of this, and we'll just look at my video itself. So this is the title and thumbnail right here. If you're wondering where I got this title idea from, so basically with the packaging of your videos, what you want to do is take proven frameworks and just repeat them, because you don't want to reinvent the wheel. Reinventing the wheel sometimes has a big payoff. So if you create some very unique idea, your video could blow up and do super well, but most of the time it's going to flop. So what we want to do is take things that already work and just make it slightly different. Now a lot of people, they mention 1 of 10. You should get the 1 of 10 tool, use that to find outliers. Okay, that could work. I personally don't use 1 of 10. I haven't used it. Maybe I should try it out. But my reasoning for not doing it is because if everybody is telling you to use 1 of 10, that means that if you join them and use 1 of 10 as well, then you're just doing what everyone else is doing. And in that case, would you stand out? So my idea is to just do the opposite of what everyone else is doing and don't use 1 of 10. Now that might be really bad advice, but that's what I'm doing right now. Maybe I'll change my mind in the future. But what I did was I just manually found an outlier video. I didn't actually use 1 of 10. All I did was copy Film Booth. So as you know, I'm a massive Film Booth fanboy. He's basically taught me everything I know about YouTube. And what I did was I just went through his videos. I believe I just sorted by most popular. And one of his videos that did very well was, in fact, I can't even find it oh no, there it is. One of the videos that did very well for him was this one right here, editing hacks YouTubers use to hook you. So I thought, if I'm making a video about script writing, why not just do script writing hacks YouTubers use to hook you? And I did a very similar thumbnail with 3 big YouTubers in the front and then some phrase at the top. So basically the exact same thumbnail. And that's how we got this thing right here. So with Film Booth's video, he had an editing timeline in the back. Since this was about scripts, I thought I could maybe do, writing in the background or something like that, but I decided to just go with a retention graph. I did Iman Gadzi, and I did these YouTubers. They're big, info-based YouTubers, since I'm mainly targeting info-based creators. And I used the text "feels like cheating," because that's like a pro hack, by the way. If you just put "feels like cheating" in there, it just blows up the video. It's OP. So it seemed to do well. That's the packaging. And I think that this packaging was a big reason why the video did well. Honestly, this video was my first video. I think my later videos were actually better in terms of quality. Like my script writing got better. I understood more about YouTube, but for some reason, sometimes the title and thumbnail, you get a good one, it just blows up the video. So that's that. But curiosity loops, okay, going back to this, the 3 to 4 curiosity loops from my video were this. So when you look at this, you might be wondering, okay, what are the script writing hacks that YouTubers use to hook you? That might be one. You might be wondering if anyone can do it. You might be wondering how to do it. Feels like cheating? Is this super easy? Right? There's all these little questions you have in your head. You basically want to sit there, you want to brainstorm as many as you can, and you can even ask ChatGPT to do it. So I have a ChatGPT prompt that I use where I just type in the title of my video, and then I say, think of 12 possible open loop questions the viewer might have, and then it lists it out. That way I know, okay, these are the things that the viewer will think in their head when they see this title and thumbnail. Now the title and thumbnail, this isn't my specialty, so I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but it does matter when it comes to writing the script. That's why these curiosity loop questions will matter in the intro of your video when you write the hook. So that's why I'm diving into this right now. But since I'm not an expert at this, I'm not going to go too far into this. You can find better creators that understand thumbnails better. Go watch them. But to move into the scripting portion of the video, let's start with the intro. So the intro could be split up into 3 sections. We have the hook, the credibility line, and the setup. So starting with the hook. Now the hook is basically just the opening line, and this is how you get the viewer to keep watching the rest of the video. It has to build intrigue, it has to be exciting, and it has to be relevant to the title and thumbnail. So usually what I follow is the VV framework. So that means that the opening line of your video and the opening frame visually of your video needs to match the title and thumbnail. If it does that, that means it's relevant to the title that the viewer clicked on. You don't want to make it some random thing, like if your video is about the top 5 dentist hacks, and then they click the video and it's about League of Legends or something, the viewer's going to be confused and they're going to click off. So as long as you make it slightly relevant, it should work out. So anyways, going back to hooks. We have 5 hooks right here. There's many other type of hooks you can use, but the 5 basic ones are story hook, metaphor hook, gamified hook, statement hook, and question hook. So I've made videos previously explaining these type of hooks, and later on, as we go through the example script, I can show you some of these hooks in action. After your hook, you then have credibility. If you're an info-based creator, it is so important to build credibility at the start of your video, because if the viewer doesn't trust you, they're just going to click off because you're just some random dude yapping on the internet. And there's 2 ways you can do this. The first is through authority. So if you're an expert at something, you want to make sure to mention this, whether through testimonials, case studies, just what you've achieved, awards, whatever you can do to show off that you know what you're talking about, you want to do that. So that's the authority bias. Okay, people just trust people that look like they know what they're talking about. That's why in advertisements, especially related to medicine or health, the announcer is always wearing a doctor's lab coat, because it just automatically signals that they know what they're talking about. So this part's super important, and I'll show you examples of this later. Now you might be thinking, but I'm not an expert, I'm just a beginner who's trying to figure things out, and I'm documenting my progress along the way. In that case, you can do something called the input bias. So this is what I did when I was starting out. Since I wasn't an expert, I didn't want to pretend to be some pro when I didn't know what I was talking about. So I would just use the input bias, which is basically showing the amount of effort or the amount of time that you put into something, right? I spent 500 hours learning this thing, and this is what I learned, right? You're going from that frame of the student rather than the expert, and it still builds credibility, because if someone spent 500 hours trying to learn something, then they probably know some things. That's the credibility. And in fact, I'm actually going to dive into the script right now, just so you can see the hook and the input bias. So right here, opening line, the hook. I just went with a question hook. Ever wondered how the top YouTubers keep you watching till the very end? Okay, pretty simple. Not that fancy of a hook. But it's a question that's related to the title, which is the top script writing hacks YouTubers use. So we deliver on that promise with this question. And the reason why questions do well is because it gets the viewer thinking in their head. They subconsciously answer the question, whether it's a yes or a no. Okay, if they clicked on the video in the first place, then they probably want to know how the top YouTubers keep them watching. So they're going to answer yes. And basically the more yeses they say in their head, the more they're going to continue to comply with whatever you say. Now for input bias, alright, I just said that I studied over 500 hours of the most popular YouTube videos to understand what makes their script stand out. Now this number is probably higher, honestly. I've been watching YouTube my entire life for hours. Like, I was addicted to this since a kid. I would just sit there and watch YouTube all day. So I understand like what makes a good video, and I made sure to mention that. Like, I'm basically addicted to this thing. My advice is good. You can trust me. Just trust me, bro. That's what this line is. Without this, they'll just think I'm some random dude who watched another tutorial and now I'm just saying what the other guy said. They're not going to care, right? You have to show why you actually know what you're talking about. And that could then lead to the setup. So here's where you answer those curiosity loop questions that we talked about earlier in the packaging. And the point of the setup is to basically let the viewer know what they're going to see, what's coming up next. And if you answer these curiosity loop questions from the packaging, then the viewer's going to think, wow, this guy's actually reading my mind. That's exactly why I clicked on this video. I wanted to know what the top script writing hacks were. And that's what we did. Alright, so today I'm going to reveal a simple script structure to get more views, a sneaky way that big YouTubers get you hooked with the opening line of the video, as well as a secret trick to get your viewers binge watching your channel. So these are all things that the viewer wants. I then list them out. You can do 2 to 3 I think works best. And then this basically just teases what's to come in the video. So that's the hook. You want to keep it short, as quick as possible. Don't ask the viewer to like the video. Don't ask them to subscribe. None of that trash. Just super fast, rapid fire through this, and then dive into the next section. So that's the intro for you, but just hold on real quick because we're not done just yet. There is still more to come because we need to add in 3 extra elements to make it that extra bit better. Now this one I learned from George Blackman. He was the scriptwriter for Ali Abdaal and he has some good stuff on Twitter. So I learned this from him. I'm not the inventor of all these things. They're basically just a collection of tricks that I learned from other creators that I'm compiling together into the framework that I use. So this is from George Blackman, credit goes to him. But the 3 elements are target, transformation, and stakes. So basically, your hook needs to include the target. So this is your target audience. Who do you want to watch the video? It needs to show the transformation that they desire, as well as the stakes, which is why is this important? Why does this matter? If you have these 3 elements, it will boost your hook's retention rate a lot. Let's look at our example. So let's highlight the elements right here, okay? So let's look at the transformation first. So keep you watching to the very end. It's gonna be a transformation that the viewers want. Make their script stand out. It's another transformation. They want a simple script structure to get more views. Get your viewers binge watching your channel. So these are all the desired transformations that they want, right? Why this is important, the stakes. Now I actually did not include this here, but I did basically right after, so I guess it still counts. It's still at the beginning of the video. I said, what is the biggest mistake new YouTubers make that destroys their watch percentage? So this is the stakes. This is why it's important, okay? Now, target viewer is YouTubers. We'll talk about it here. YouTubers, your channel, right? So we're talking to them. So by watching it, they know that this is for them, okay? We're talking to the viewer themselves. So we have all the elements right here. So this is a decent hook. We got stakes, transformation, target. We're good to go. Now, for the hook, I actually do have a ChatGPT prompt that I use to help with this. And all I do is I enter in the title of the video, and then it spits out 12 hooks that I can look through. I can choose the one that I like the most, It then gives me input bias lines and then open loop questions to help with the setup. So this basically just helps make the hook writing process so much quicker. You can get your hook written in like 3 minutes. Super useful. I'll give it to you. I'll put a link to it in the first link of the description. But I get a lot of messages from people saying, Luke, I haven't got the prompt yet. It hasn't sent. Okay, ConvertKit is what I use to send the prompt, and sometimes it takes a long time to send. So you just gotta wait a few minutes, all right? Wait 5-10 minutes. If you still don't get it and it's been like an hour or something, then just send me an email and then I'll manually send it to you, because sometimes maybe it goes to the spam folder or the promotions tab. If that's the case, just drag it to your inbox and that should prevent the emails from going there in the future. Yeah, just letting you know, because I get a lot of messages from people saying that they haven't got the prompt. Just wait a bit, it'll get to you eventually. So we're done with the intro. Now is the main body section. So when it comes to the main body section, usually you're gonna have 3 to 5 sections. Okay, you could have more, you could have 20, 10, doesn't really matter honestly, but I usually keep it to 3 to 5. Depends how long you want the video to be. Okay, sometimes you have a listicle video with like 12 different things. You can have 12 sections in that case. Damn, I'm sick, so like my voice is destroyed right now. So sorry about that, but basically what you want to do is for each section, you want to open a new curiosity loop. Okay, this is just a hook, and if you want to know how to write a hook, it's the same as the start of the video. Okay, you got the question hook, the strong statement hook, the gamified hook, metaphor hook, story hook, whatever one you want, you just write a new hook for that section. From there, right, there's a big mistake people make. Now with a lot of videos, what people tend to do, and this is intuitively how we would teach people most of the time, what people do is they say, okay, the first thing I learned was, and then they list out the lesson, right? And then after they list out the lesson, they then go into explaining why, right? They give the story behind it, they give context, they start teaching it. Now this is usually what you do in school, okay? This is the normal way to teach. But the problem with YouTube is, you want to think of it like you're spoiling the end of the movie, right? If you give away the key piece of information, and then you start giving the context afterwards, they already know the key piece of information, so the viewer might just skip forward because they don't need to listen to it anymore. So what you want to do instead is basically reverse the order of information. Now this might not really make sense right now. I'm going to show you an example so that it's easier to understand, right? Like let's say you're making a video on the top 10 side hustles, right? And then you start out, side hustle number 1, drop shipping. Okay? And then you start talking about drop shipping. The viewer might have already tried drop shipping and it sucked and they hated it, so they're gonna skip. Or they might just click off the video entirely, which is the worst case scenario. But there's no point for them to listen anymore. So what you want to do instead is either tell a story, give an analogy, or you can give examples in a way that it's kind of a game, right? You can say something like, hey, I'm going to show you 2 things and I want you to guess which one is the correct one. It makes it more interesting for them. I like this one a lot. But you do that first and then you give the lesson, right? If you watched Alex Hormozy before or Iman Gadzi, like any big YouTuber, whenever they're teaching a lesson, they always tell this super long story beforehand. And then the story, they use the story itself to actually teach the lesson. And it makes it more engaging. You actually remember the information better because it's more fun. It's in a story rather than them just yapping out fact after fact. It just makes the video better. And then from there you can then teach the lesson. And you can tell the lesson in like 1 to 2 sentences max. You just say, and that is how I learned that, blah, blah, blah. And then from there you can show examples, you can give nuanced and actionable tips. And when you're done with that, you then jump into a new curiosity loop. You give a new hook, and then you repeat this process for as many main body sections as you have. Now to show our script, this is kind of how I did it, right? So the first main body section, I said this. This is the hook. But first, what is the biggest mistake new YouTubers make that destroys their watch percentage? Okay? So now this opens a new loop. You need to know what this big mistake is. Now instead of just telling the mistake straight away, I kind of build intrigue on it a little bit. Now this one is obvious, but I still see it all the time, right? You're still working towards revealing it, you're building curiosity, and you would think that this trend already died in 2010, but no, right? Still building more intrigue. Haven't revealed anything yet. I then show the thing. All right, it was like an animated intro on why it was like why sigma males are more attractive than alpha males, and then it was like this epic like, you know those Minecraft YouTuber intros where there's like epic dubstep music like na 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 na, and they have like text spinning around on the screen. Yeah, it's that sort of thing, right? Just throw back to the old days of YouTube. So I show the example, right? So this would be kind of like a gamified example of it, right? It's more interactive. I'm reversing it, right? I'm showing the thing, and then they're figuring out what the thing is, right? So then I kind of go in about it, like nobody cares about your animated intro. First, it's cringe, and second, it wastes the viewer's time. I then have a meme, and then I show why it's bad, right? You see this graph right here? Look at this massive drop. These cringe intros are a big reason for this. But there's also another common mistake that causes this too. So, another loop, right? This is still the same section. I show the thing, and then I say there's another mistake. So we open a new, this is like basically another hook, and we then repeat the same process again. You see how quick it was? It was the hook and then a few lines before we have another hook. You need to do these quick, okay? Because the longer I yap about this thing, the more likely the viewer is to just click away and get bored. So as soon as we reveal the thing, we talk a little bit about why it's bad. Honestly, to make it better, what I might do is flip it even more, right? I think what I would do in like right now that because I wrote this one 8 months ago. What I would probably do is flip it. So you see this graph right here. I would maybe move that up here to, right? So I'll flip it like this. This is the big mistake that destroys their watch percentage. You see this graph right here? Look at this drop. It's because of this next thing, right? I'll kind of build on it a little bit more instead of putting it there, but anyway, that's what we did. It ended up working out okay, so it wasn't a big deal. But yeah, I think the reason it worked was because we just did one line and it was like half a second. Viewers didn't have enough time to click off at that point. But with the new hook, boom, I then do another kind of gamified example. Rather than just telling the viewer why, I end up kind of role-playing the thing, right? So, but before I reveal it, make sure to smack that like button, hit that subscribe and notification bell, bruh. And after you're done with that, check out my Instagram, Twitter, and OnlyFans, link in the description. So here, instead of just telling them the thing, I'm demonstrating it to the viewer right there. And then I go, you see how that pissed you off? This might be the first time you've seen my face, and I'm giving you 1,000 different call to actions. First of all, I gave you decision fatigue, and you already forgot half the things I said. And second, you don't want to do it because I've given you no value. So I explain why it's bad, and then it's done. We do it really quick. From the hook, a few lines, it's finished. And then we then do another hook. So you see how this process repeats, right? We're flipping the order of information by doing gamified examples, and then teaching the lesson a little bit, and then diving to the next one. And you keep doing this over and over again. So again, the hook, but what is the correct way to do your call to actions? So we just talked about the wrong way to do call to actions. The obvious next step is, how do you actually do it right? So that's the next hook. It's the next thing the viewer needs to learn about, and we smoothly transition to the next section. And for this one, I decided to go with a metaphor for building context. So we did 2 gamified examples before. This time I went with a metaphor. Now, for my metaphors, right, similar to stories, I like to split it into 5 kind of sections, right? You introduce it, set the scene, conflict, attempt a solution, the result, and then from there, link it to how it's related to YouTube. So I have them labeled here, so you kind of see what's going on. But this is how it goes. So I want you to think about the last time you watched a Netflix series. It's late at night, and after you finish this episode, you're going to bed. But then, something epic happens, and now you're left on a cliffhanger. So you gotta watch the next episode, and now you're stuck in a binge-watching session. So that's kind of the relatable situation, right? This is the relatable analogy. Everyone's had this happen to them before. So then you can say, but what if I told you that you can do something similar with your YouTube channel? So you link this analogy to YouTube. And the best thing is, this is another hook as well, right? So now they're wondering, oh, you can do that? And then I now kind of build more curiosity, so I'm listing out benefits. So that instead of 1 view per viewer, you instead get 2, 3, or even 4 views on the channel. And these long session times is something YouTube loves, by the way. So the algorithm is going to promote your videos even more. So benefits, right? Why this is important, builds more intrigue. And then we do another hook. Tease them on why this thing's important, and then we say, but how do you actually set this up? Another hook, gets the viewer back into needing to know something else. Okay, they want to know how to set this thing up. So then I say, well, you can do that with this 3-step call to action framework. Here's how it goes, starting with step 1. So now we're going into the 3 steps. And again, frameworks are good for retention. Actually, I should have included this in my flow chart. But when you're showing examples or giving, actionable tips, if you can package it into a 3-step, 4-step, whatever, 5-step framework, it's going to make it a lot more enticing, right? And it also increases retention because they now need to follow the next 3 steps. And that's kind of the next thing in their mind, is they're kind of tunneled in on these 3 steps, starting with step 1. Now, you see how I'm flipping the order of information again? Instead of saying, step number 1, do this, right? I'm flipping the context again. I'm giving like the common mistake first, and then I teach the correct way, rather than doing the correct way and then giving the mistakes after, right? I'm just flipping it again. So I go, now whenever you do a call to action, you don't want to make it obvious to the viewer, because as soon as the viewer realizes that the video is ending, then they are going to click off, leaving you with a retention graph that looks like this. Show the graph. So what I do is have a subtle transition line which appears like I'm beginning another section of the video. And a simple way you can do this is to link back to something you mentioned earlier in the video. Here's an example. Let's say your video is about editing tricks to increase your watch percentage. You can then do something like this. And then I give the example. Earlier I mentioned how good editing can keep the viewer watching until the very end. Right from there, we go into step 2. Now after this line, we then go into step 2. And this is the hardest step to get right, so it's going to take some practice. Again, building intrigue, right? We're not revealing it just yet. We're saying something about it to kind of get them curious. It's the hardest step. Oh, wow. So step 2 is where you want to create intrigue to get the viewer to click on the end screen video. And you can do this by creating a new problem for the viewer. So to continue with our example, but if nobody clicks on your video, then even the best editing in the world won't save your video from failing. Which then takes us into step 3. This one is straightforward. So you see what I'm doing, right? I'm just step 1, step 2, step 3. I then end with some benefits, and that's it. And by using this framework, you have a web of videos that gets viewers binge watching your channel. Right, point 3. Now you can have the best end screen call to action in the world, right? Another hook, new section. But if nobody gets to the end of the video in the first place, then it won't matter. All right, so we're creating a new problem right here. There's a new problem that the viewer needs to solve. And the place that most viewers drop off is in the opening 30 seconds. So how do we stop this? New hook, and then we do a story, right? So this is the context section again. We don't teach the lesson yet. The lesson comes down here. But what we do is we open with a story on how I learned this thing. So I then go, again, the same kind of framework as the analogy. It's scene, problem, solution, result. We'll flash back to more than 2 years ago, and I was trying to figure out how to make money online. And that's when I came across something called copywriting, which is content with the goal of having the viewer take a specific action like making a sale. Now, although I ended up quitting freelance copywriting, the skills I developed ended up having a massive impact on my YouTube videos. And the most important skill was writing good hooks, right? So basically, the point of this story was just to say that writing good hooks is important. So I yapped about this story for a bit, revealed the lesson, and then from there, again, there are many hooks you can try, but here are 3 simple ones to get started. And again, it's the framework, right? It's the numbered lists. These are great ways to show your tips. So I'm not going to go through like the whole thing again, but you kind of get the idea. It's similar to the first one. Hook number 1, give an example. Explain what it is. Hook number 2, give an example. Explain it a bit. Hook number 3, explain it a bit. You can look through this, and you can pause the video and kind of read it if you want. I'm not going to go too deep into this. Point 4, exact same thing. Another hook. So we've gotten the viewer hooked by our intro, but how do we make sure the content is good enough to keep them interested? And then another story, right? Same thing. Story, scene, problem, result, lesson. Or solution as well, which I didn't highlight. But yeah, same story again, right? Do the same process, teach the lesson, and then give a few tips, right? Some benefits from it, some nuanced tips, and then boom. So that's the main body sections for you. I feel like I went a bit too long into that, but that is that. For the main body section, we then jump into the outro. Okay, this is the ending of the video, and there's basically 3 parts to it. You have the transition, the intrigue, and the CTA. So how does this work? Well, let's look at our video right here. So what you want to do here is The mistake people make is they make it obvious that the video is ending. Okay, they start talking about, so if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe, and they start saying that stuff. It signals to the viewer that, okay, the video's done, everything from this point is probably useless, and they're going to click off. You do not want that to happen, because one of the best ways you can get more views on your channel is by sending them from one video to the next. Okay, if you can get them into a binge watching session, which was actually what we were talking about in one of the main body sections here. We were talking about that, the best CTA strategy. So you want to do a transition line. You want to make it subtle. So instead of going, if you enjoyed the video, you just want to pretend like you're starting a new point. That way the viewer doesn't think anything. They're just thinking the video is continuing. So I usually say something like, so earlier I mentioned that good script writing is what makes or breaks a viral YouTube video. I'd say something like that, and they'll just think it's another point. I then build intrigue, and you basically do this by creating a new problem for the viewer. Okay? So I say, but writing can be tedious, especially for content creators that have many things to focus on, like editing and filming. So I have a new problem now, right? So what is the solution for this? This is the CTA. Right, now this was different. Now at this time, since this was my first video on the channel, I didn't have another video to send them to. So instead of sending them to another video, which is what I would normally do now, I just sent them to check the link in the description to work with me. So I just said, so if you want your YouTube scripts written for you, then click the link in the description to work with me. And that was it. Pretty straightforward. That's the end screen call to action. Subtle transition line, create a new problem, and call to action. So earlier we talked about storytelling and how to use stories to build context, but I wasn't able to dive deep into exactly how you do a story step by step. So if you want to learn how to tell stories the right way to get you insanely high retention curves, then check out this video next to learn the storytelling hacks big YouTubers use to hook you.